All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. It's been a while since I streamed or put out a video, and I've been hard at work trying to finish up these last projects with AI. I do think this is going to be a huge transformative technology, whether we like it or not. And I like it and I don't like it. To answer that last question of whether I like it or not, I'm split on this. You know, I love math. I think that we can use math to benefit everybody. And I've always loved computer programming, and I see the value of it. And AI can help me program probably 10 times faster. More than that when I'm dealing in languages that I'm not fluent in. And it's also very scary. And the last few days, I've also been watching these like crazy billionaire tech people behind AI, or leading the charge, I should say, and listening to all their statements very closely and seeing if I can read between the lines and see where this is going. And I think I can. You know, I like to bring this analogy. Well, I'm bringing up an analogy, something that I bring up a lot as far as how they deceive us in the public school system, the education system, is they'll give you some helpful, truthful information, and then they weaponize that, right? They'll teach you the Pythagorean theorem, and then they'll throw a bunch of lies in there right afterwards after they've gained your trust. And I see something very similar happening with AI. I think right now it's the party favors to get everybody to the party, get people addicted to the technology, make it seem like it's so much better than everybody else. And then they're going to try to make us allow them to simulate everything, simulate the climate, simulate politics and government and, you know, foreign policy, all this crap. And we're all supposed to just believe that it's the same logic coming to their conclusions that we get access to. And it's really just this super smart artificial intelligence. And the fair thing to do, the most smart thing to do, is just delegate all our thinking to it. And that is the huge problem that I'm already seeing. Another huge problem is I totally understand if people don't want to use this technology, but they are going to be, and I'm against this, ruining so many jobs with this, purposefully trying to, what's the term I'm looking for? Replace workers with robots, right? And with AI. And that's not like what delights me about the technology. What delights me about the technology is that it can do work for people, and it can perform tasks for people and save people time, and ultimately allow people to achieve and dream much bigger and actually execute all the small parts required to achieve their big dream. And that's really cool to me, thinking about, okay, the artists and the writers and the programmers and the people who make videos, if they're all super powered, then we can all sit back and enjoy the fruits of everybody's labor and the labor of the AI servers. But the problem is, of course, they're going to drive the lower classes and the poor, especially, into the dirt, and people aren't going to be able to play, you know, the pay-to-play terminology. And it's really depressing, that aspect of it. How they'll just destroy so many millions of jobs. I'm thinking like truck drivers and restaurant workers and all these great people who need to make a living. And so one thing I talk about this for is because we're all kind of forced to use this technology, whether we like it or not. And the reason why is because everybody's competing with each other for intellectual positions. And how can anybody compete with somebody who's got, you know, this huge advantage? So everybody's going to have to embrace it. Angel in the chat says, when you ask AI questions, it mixes truth with lies. Absolutely. They program it, and they if it doesn't say it, they'll just keep programming it until it does. And they just blame everything on biases. Oh, the humans are biased. We know all the real answers. So until the computer tells us what we know are the real answers, we're going to tell it it's wrong. So there's a lot of problems, and I really don't like the situation all that much. But at the same time, the question becomes, what do we do? Do we just boycott the technology? Do we become Luddites and start smashing things when the self-driving cars drive down the street, some people do that. And I expect there to be like full-on riots at some point in the future against the robots and the AI. And I wish I had better answers. A lot of this goes back to the root issues in society that we've been talking about, the money printing and the Federal Reserve and the government, which is way more abusive and wasteful than it is helpful to the people it should be helping. The exploitative systems of control and slavery, frankly. So those are the real problems, and we shouldn't look at their new fancy tool and ignore the root issues. Also, what we run the risk of doing is banning innovation and banning what could be like a totally beneficial technology. Like in reality, would it be the worst thing in the world if nobody had to work because they were just robots to help us do all the manual labor and the heavy lifting and the thinking? Like I would never want to stop thinking. I would always try to achieve way more than I ever could. But all these tools that increase our productivity and take the weight off our shoulders, they could just make our lives so much easier and so much better. But the problem is people aren't going to be able to afford it because the inflation and people's savings have been stolen from them, et cetera, et cetera. And I just worry that people are going to end up falling into the trap of like attacking intellectuals instead of attacking oligarchs. So with all that said, I just wanted to, it's really been weighing on me because I use this technology every single day. I've become addicted to it myself, especially because the plan is like, what do we do in the face of all of those problems I just mentioned? Do we boycott and shun the technology? I don't think so. At least at this point, and even at any point. At this point, I'm talking more about ChatGPT because it's not totally terrible yet. Like you can extract a ton of really useful, helpful information and work from ChatGPT to make your life easier. I do it every single day. Because I don't know when it's going to go full YouTube and totally ruin the whole flow of information. For all I know, we just have a very narrow window here by which to extract a bunch of useful information and then turn to the open source models at that point. And that's another big thing. They're scaring people with the AI, and then the government's coming in, they're like, well, we can't let the terrorists use AI, so we have to have everybody register with the government whenever they have a smart enough model. We have to register with the government and have the government set thresholds and put these systems through the paces so they don't give us any misinformation. And we all know what the government calls misinformation, right? So what I want to see is like a thriving open source AI community. But what they want is everybody paying ChatGPT $20 a month as they purposefully demolish the workforce. I mean, this is a big depopulation type agenda. We know that's part of their agenda. And I do worry very much about playing into their hands, and I'm trying not to do that. To me, I know who watches because to some extent, because we've been put in these echo chambers over the years. So I'm talking to people who watch my channel and have been following me for a while because I don't have really access to the general public. So I'm thinking about, okay, what's the message for the audience that I know and love? Well, I think that people need to arm themselves with these tools and figure the ins and the outs of them because it's really going to get crazy. And currently, a very small percentage of people have actually started using the tools. But those people have a huge advantage. And so I want you to have a huge advantage. And so let's dive in. This is an interesting post by Maxime Leban on Twitter. So recently, ChatGPT put out their latest model, which is an interesting one, GPT-4o. O stands for Omni. And what's interesting about this model is it seems to have been trained on totally different data. And it's also a multimodal model, which means that it kind of takes images and audio and text and video all in stride, kind of treats them, on par with each other. It's not like a huge change to have an image input. It's all just dealt in the same fashion. And so that's a big change. It's also much faster. And for some tasks, I think in large part by how it was trained, it does certain things better. Like for programming, it does a better job of not like abbreviating and leaving key code snippets out that'll end up biting you later when you're like, oh shoot, where'd my code go? I needed that. So that was an interesting release from ChatGPT, but that's not the one that I think is going to be world changing. I think the next release, probably going to be called ChatGPT5, is going to be the huge game changer. GPT-4 is already a massive productivity boost for I'd imagine most people who do any work on a computer, especially if you're like a programmer or a writer or you deal in text. Huge productivity boost. And I recommend at least trying it for a month and seeing what you can get out of it. Okay, but here's what I think. Okay, before we get on to my prediction, it's interesting to note here, at least in this metric, it does seem like the closed source models are losing steam. And the open weight models, that is the models that you can download off the internet if you have a sufficiently advanced computer, and you can train them even further, which is cool because if you have your own data set, which not very many people do, but we should start looking at how to build these data sets. You can do the last round of training, pretty much, to make it excel at the tasks that you want it to excel at. So that includes putting more information, more knowledge into the network, the neural network, as well as you can also kind of teach it how to present the information it already knows in a format that you like better. So the open weight models are catching up, and they're all kind of right here. It's actually a little bit, this chart is misleading, because if you look at the y-axis, this is using MMLU, which is basically a system for scoring language models, massive multitask language understanding. And there's kind of a cap at 95 to 100%. So they're all kind of ending up right here at 85%. But when you put them side by side, it does seem like ChatGPT 4.0 has a commanding lead. Although a lot of people call that into question and say that they don't have the best experience with it. Personally, for me, I think it's pretty amazing and gets a lot of my jobs done better than GPT-4. But here's where it gets really crazy. I think, and this would be really, honestly, I think terrible news if you just think about the numerology for 2 seconds. I think that this account might be onto something. They're citing this prediction to, quote, internal sources, which could just be totally BS, right? But this countdown to GPT-5 has been posting for something like 70 days now. Has been suspended at least once, I think twice. So they started on March the 25th, and they said 72 days to go. 71 days, 70. And the latest post 10 hours ago, 10 days, they say, to GPT-5. So according to their bio here, counting down to June the 6th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So 6-6. You can see their logo also predominantly features, I mean, you could say each of these kind of look like sixes in a way. But there's 6 of them going around a circle, and in the inside here, a hexagram, 6-sided figure down here. So you could almost say that's another 66. So that would be kind of fitting for them to put this out on 6-6. You know, I made the prediction earlier. You might remember I was worried they were going to put it out on Pi Day, 3/14. And I was like, if they put it out on Pi Day, that's going to be probably bad news based on everything we've been seeing with Pi. I won't reiterate that, but I think this would be worse if they put it out on 6-6. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope this countdown to ChatGPT 5 is wrong. But just keep an eye out, because this changes everything. If this comes out on 6-6, I mean, whenever it comes out, it's going to shake the world. I have a feeling. unless it's just some marginal improvement. So I just advise people to get ready, brace yourselves, and think about what you would do if some crazy new AI model emerges on the scene. Do you have projects that it could help you with, et cetera, et cetera. So there's also the open source models, the alternative models. Yeah, Plague Zero says, from what they've seen, GPT should arrive by the end of October or early November, which is also something I've seen as well. I saw something on YouTube. I could pull it up. People were extrapolating based off this like loosely drawn chart on, let me pull up my history on YouTube. There was like a chart on some presentation, co-presentation with Microsoft and ChatGPT, whereby they were showing that they were still on like this exponential growth trajectory. And people were looking at this and saying, well, look, they have a dot here. And that means if we extrapolate and we put the timeline down on the x-axis, man, where did this go? I swear I watched more videos than this. Let's just search November. Huh. Yeah, I saw that video too. People are definitely talking about this. Even in the comments here, you'll see, no, it's happening in November. We'll see. I think if it comes out on 6/6, that's pretty scary. Like this person, next model is coming in November. So we'll see. I think, you could make the argument that there has been a lot of groundwork laid over the past few weeks with them getting GPT-4 Omni out, all of these other presentations they've done with Microsoft and the like, putting out the batch requesting, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I have no idea if this is right. I think it's interesting that they started like 75 days ago and they haven't really let up other than the times they were banned. This account here, just very strange. Joined in March and just started posting about it. And they're claiming they have internal sources, which could just be totally bull, right? So I just wanted to think about that because, we'll be talking today about what ChatGPT 4 can do. And it's already really mind-blowing, if you ask me. So if 5 comes out, it's anybody's guess what this thing will be capable of. And how much of a gap there's going to be between people who embrace it and people who shun it. And it's interesting, I know that a lot of people in my audience just totally hate this whole topic. Some people are just totally disinterested, which I can get. But I feel like there is a concerted effort amongst so-called, these influencer types in the conservative circles to trash this and get people just to be so anti-intellectual and, hate coding, hate intelligence, hate artificial intelligence, chug a bunch of neurotoxic crap that they say is like a detox. I mean, it's just, oh, you're full of parasites. Take this neurotoxic clastogenic ivermectin that ruins your fertility, they tell us, which is terrible medical advice, right? Everyone's basically just putting themselves in near comas and lobotomizing themselves, which I'm totally against. So I find that very interesting, and it makes sense, right? If you have this group that you hate, the establishment wants everyone to be like communist liberals, and you have this group that isn't going along with the program, get them to poison themselves, kill themselves, get them to hate all these like world-changing technologies that could make or break people just by whether or not they embrace them. But ultimately, I'm cheering for the open source models, especially ones that aren't going to be censorious and that put their open weights out there and allow people to take the models and run with them, make them even better. And those are advancing pretty quickly as well. It's amazing how fast this whole field evolves. It's kind of this phenomenon we've seen before, that once people see something is possible and exists and there's a market for it, it changes, how the engineering happens, because people are like, oh, it's possible? Let's do it. Like just the proof of concept makes people like, Oh, I guess it is possible. Let's invest a couple billion and figure this out. Okay, so there's a lot of new models popping up on the scene. There's this new one from China called E Large, taking the 7th spot. This is an interesting site called lmsys.org. And it'll be interesting to see how this shakes up over the next few weeks and months. For example, here, this is the team behind Qwen. Somebody at Qwen says, "You'll climb to the top 5 next month." And they posted this 6 days ago, talking about somebody who fine-tuned Qwen 1.5. So they have this Sailor 14 billion chat. I'm not sure what the filter is here because this seems like a subset of the list that we were looking at. I don't have it open at the moment. And then this person says, oh, that means Qwen 2 is coming out in June. And so the way it works with training these models, they can probably see some sort of benchmarks as it progresses and can see how well it's doing. And it seems like they have some high hopes for this. So it's interesting to see this whole space getting commoditized. And everybody's just tripping over themselves trying to make better models that are, slightly cheaper. There's a great website, if you haven't heard of it, openrouter.ai, where you can kind of shop around and find, using the same website, all these different options that you can plug into. Like the free ones are a little bit misleading. I was trying to use this free one, and I couldn't get a single response back. So it kind of defeats the purpose if it doesn't work. And obviously that's because they're just probably getting bombarded with people trying to get free responses instead of paying $1 million in and out per... Did I say $1 million? Paying $1 in and out per million tokens. This is the new one from Microsoft, Phi 3. And it's nothing special. But it's just interesting how, the uptake keeps going. It has kind of stalled a bit. But I do think that people are kind of waiting to see what happens. Let's watch this chart here. This is interesting. This is the ELO scores by company. So the top model for each company over time. And remember, ELO is relative. So it's kind of like chess grandmasters who play against each other. I'll play this while I talk. Say you get really good and you learn some new tricks in chess. You learn some new openings. You'd still have to play a few games before it really takes effect into your ELO score. So you'll see, like, over time, them shoot up. That means they put out a new model right when it starts shooting up, but it takes a while for it to kind of propagate through the system and have enough wins to beat the other models. And OpenAI has been kind of edging people out this whole time. And I also question behind the scenes how different some of these models really are, like Anthropic and OpenAI. It's strange to me that they're just so on par. And oftentimes when you put their responses next to each other, it almost seems like they're the same model, maybe just a little bit tailored to look different. Now, I don't know, that sounds crazy, I know, but it wouldn't shock me if they just kind of have the same thing but two faces of it. They're always both tapped at the same time for these like crazy committees, like Biden's AI Oversight Committee. We're going to have somebody from OpenAI, someone from Anthropic. It just kind of makes, it's like, I'm trying to think of a good example, maybe Coke, Pepsi, where it's like the same shit, just two faces, two labels, two brands. But you get the idea. It's interesting to see there's so much developing, and it's a very fast-paced industry at this point. So I really hate this guy here, Sam Altman. But I've been watching him the last couple of days, watching his interviews, trying to take what I can away from what he says, reading between the lines. And I actually think this is my advice too, as well, at this point. What he says right here at this point.
Is my meta answer is it's always the right bet to just get good at the most powerful new tools, most capable new tools. And so when computer programming was that, you did want to become a programmer. And now that AI tools like totally change what one person can do, you want to get really good at using AI tools.
Now, of course, he has a conflict of interest to say that. But I think that that's actually what I'm doing. I find myself doing that. It's like, find the most powerful tools and use them, I would add, for good. But I've also been hearing, a lot of his statements. It's very, very strange how the company's organized, first off, where like he apparently has no financial benefit from the company excelling. I don't even know if he has a salary. He doesn't have any stock in the company. And it's all organized where they like put everything into a quote nonprofit for charity. But think about I'm thinking like the Gates Foundation, these various foundations where if you actually look at their so-called philanthropy, you're like, wait, is this depopulation? So I do worry where my $20 a month is going to end up going. And I would love nothing more than for somebody who's putting out like either just a competing for-profit model or even better, an open source model that we can just take and run with. I would love for them to come along. But you can see already they're trying to pass legislation. The Biden administration's telling people they need to register with the government and jump through a bunch of hoops. We just saw a law pass in California saying that models can only go up to a certain threshold or something crazy like that. So they're definitely trying to pull the ladder out from under them. And they see what this technology can do, and they want to just call all the shots. So let's skip along here. Maybe we'll come back to that bit. Oh, here's the leaderboard. Interesting to see how much competition there is. Again, there's a distinct possibility that in 10 days, on 6/6 of all crazy numerical dates to pick, what's it called? OpenAI might put out their GPT-6, or excuse me, GPT-5, which I think would be kind of a bad sign, to say the least. I think I would certainly be using it from day one and trying to figure out what it does and what its capabilities are, and because there's always the possibility that there's like a very narrow window, and we can get a lot of very interesting information out in that window, then boom, it's closed. Remember, we had that with YouTube, which I think is actually a great analog to understand where this is going. It's like a trap, essentially, trying to prevent competition by doing things cheaper and better. So I've been building a lot of tools and systems around AI because I just think it's going to be totally world-changing. And again, we don't know how long this window is going to be open. So for example, this is one of the sites I've been putting together. I'll probably sell this for maybe $50 or something if anybody's interested, or you can just build your own version. Feel free to, take this idea. But the way it works is I'm finding myself copying and pasting a lot of code into ChatGPT or whatever software I'm using, whatever I should say, model I'm using. So I was thinking, okay, wouldn't it be nice if I could have like little placeholders? So let me switch over to this project, for example. Yeah, exactly. MD Andrea says we need to figure out how to use our own LLMs and other tools and maybe decentralize them. I totally agree. And I've been trying to do that too. That's something that I think there's certain tasks that we can even utilize these tools until they plug these holes up. Like ChatGPT can help us write tons of Python that'll do machine learning for us. And that'll help us, program these machine learning algos from scratch. And I could very easily see that in a few months or years, they shut that down and they say, oh, that's potentially harmful. Some terrorists could get their hands on this and could program some super advanced model, right? So they're going to use every trick in the book, every excuse they can come up with, mostly just saying things are harmful or unsafe. But for example, let me find one here. So like the random forest here. I had like this big list of different regression models I was trying to get under my belt. And so let's load this one up. This is the random forest using scikit-learn. So what I wanted to do is have a way that I can just have placeholders here. So I could either have global placeholders like, I think it's called objective. Let me see. Oh, I think it's objectives. Yeah, there we go. So I can have these global variables save me from typing this over and over again, which is something I found myself doing. But even more importantly, I can have file or function placeholders or class placeholders. And so I have my outline of my project over here, and all I have to do is when I create a folder, or excuse me, when I create a project, it makes a folder in my projects. I put all my files in there, and then I just check which ones are kind of relevant to the placeholders and to I call it recording. Basically, it just makes backup versions of any changed files. It'll make a new backup, because and this is less of an issue now that they put out for Omni. But I would find myself losing a lot of code, especially if I turned my computer off and I couldn't undo, and go back. I'd find myself losing a bunch of code. Also, if you're interested in making your own version of this, I did do a series of live streams a couple weeks ago, you might remember, where we built this together. So you can go see how this works behind the scenes. But again, I will be putting this out to support the channel and keep this going. If anybody's interested in this code sculptor system I put together. But the idea is, I can basically so data processing, each of these 4 files I can just add to my template here. And then I can just copy the entire code set and paste it into ChatGPT and say, okay, I'm getting this error. So it saves a bunch of time. Ultimately, it probably took me way more time because I had to build this. But going forward, I'm really looking forward to whenever I come up with a crazy new project idea, like a couple I just thought of moments before the show. This one here, can you write me a skeleton VST template written in C++? So I'm hoping that this is the right VST. Yeah, VST, Virtual Studio Technology. So if you've ever used like FL Studios or Logic or what's the other one? Pro Tools. They have these little tools that people sell called VSTs, or that people put them out for free. And I was just thinking it'd be cool to maybe look at making some AI-driven VSTs. Like they have compressors, they have vocal effects, they have instrument, like virtual instrument VSTs. So I was just looking at like, what is a VST programmed in? Is it possible to make our own VSTs? Just one random idea I had. And I asked for a skeleton. I should have said plugin, skeleton VST plugin. But apparently it's written in C++. I think there's some other languages you could use. What is Juice? Actually, I don't know what Juice is. But it's just interesting that you can have it like write up a bunch of code, even when you're on the go. Like I was just, I think, going on a walk, and I had this idea, and I just hit the little microphone button on my iPhone that does the automatic speech to text. And I read this out, like you can see here, and I hit send. And then when I came back to my computer, I can just copy all this code, try it out. And I can put it into I can make a new project in here. Let's see, VST template. Project created. Got to make it a little more, I've got to refresh it, but I'm going to fix that. And let's see if it worked. Oh, I'm not seeing it. Did I break it? Maybe there's an issue with new projects. Still working through the bugs. But the idea is that I can have all these different projects, and it'll do automatic backups whenever I want to do that. I just hit the record button, so it doesn't do it when I don't really care for it to. And yeah, I thought this was cool. One of my favorite parts, though, is the saved queries. So I have this saved query that I can come to. I don't even have to do that drag and drop thing. I can just click load, and it's right here, good to go. There's another bug. I'm not sure what that's about. Still a work in progress, but that is something I suggest for people, is come up with a way that you can represent your code using placeholders so that whatever you have in the latest and greatest, you're just clicking one button instead of copying and pasting huge swaths of your code. I'm also trying to extract as much data from books as I can because everything's about data at this point. And the models, because the models in a way encapsulate a bunch of data. In a way they are databases, but they also have some pretty impressive reasoning ability and creative ability, which is mind-boggling. What was another thing I was trying to do? So something I've seen before that I was just curious how it worked are Node.js and Python programs that you can just give to people, and they just like double click and boom, they have something up and running, and they can just go to like localhost colon 8888 or whatever, some port number, or put it on a server somewhere. So I was just curious and I asked it and it just spat it out. And I've been using this a lot for various coding tasks. It's very helpful if you're, let's see, if you're coding along, so Control K starts a new chat in ChatGPT. So if you're just writing JavaScript instead of having to write it yourself or find an example, which is oftentimes impossible if you're working on something specific that either there's not going to be any posts on the internet or it'd be more work to try to track it down than to just do it. You can say like, I'm making a JavaScript function that takes an array and for each item adds a div element. And then you can say like my arrays look like this. Test 1, test 2. And it's also really good for debugging if you're trying to figure out, for example, why this is undefined here. What I could do is figure out what this class is. This is code block. Go to my debugger, Control-Shift-F. In your dev tools, lets you search all your code that's loaded, which is good for projects you have and also for other sites that you're trying to parse data from, or if somebody invites you to develop on their project and you don't know the lay of the land yet. So it looks like it's right here. So let's try this again. If I click preview, so why is... So this is my array, or my object, and this is why it's coming up undefined, because, see if I can zoom in. The path looks right. Data underscore pre-processing. What's my file contents cache? That's weird. So then I can search my debugger for file contents cache. So this is where it gets set up. And here is, let's find where it's like setting it, here, right here. So update the cache with the new content. We'll put a breakpoint here. So breakpoints are a great thing. Usually code runs really fast. And just in a blink of an eye, you miss it. And you can't see what things are set to if you just run it normally. But if you are debugging it, if you're in debug mode, you can like freeze frame like in the Matrix and see exactly which bullets are flying at you, so to speak. So if we hit play here and let me disengage this breakpoint, refresh. So right here, it seems to be setting it properly. Seems to be setting it properly. Seems to be setting it properly. So I can just kind of mouse over and see. Now if I go to my console, I can run this command that I last ran. So hitting the up arrow and hitting enter. Now it looks correct. So if we go to saved queries, load this up, go to preview. Okay, so it's working now. So there's some weird bug. I'll have to track that down. But now you can see what it's supposed to look like. And I'm finding this to be very, very helpful already. And I just kind of Oops, too zoomed in. There we go. It's fixed. And I'm really excited about the future as far as my own ability to develop much quicker. And if an idea comes, even if it's a big idea, I can just knock it out. Like let's take an example here. So I think I have this queued up here as auto read helper. Let's load this project. So what I was thinking in this project is, so this is the handler, the PHP handler. So PHP allows you to write server-side code. So there's the client side, which is like the phones and the tablets and the web browsers. And then there's your server, which serves all of them. And so PHP is a great server-side language to start with. I use it to this day, even though, some people rave about other things, other languages. PHP is just tried and true, and it's just such an amazing language, if you ask me. So basically all I'm doing at this point is just logging whatever gets sent to it, just so I can do some testing. So nothing really amazing here. This is something I just had started playing with. It didn't actually work. I didn't put too much time in this, but let me show you my idea. So I came across something called BERT. You've probably heard me talk about BERT. I have something on Substack that I published if you're at all interested in applying BERT. Let me show you that. So I have a Python script, so a couple Python classes, some example data sets, and what's really interesting about BERT is it allows you to put things into buckets. So you basically classify text. So if you have a number of different categories that you're trying to put things in, you could just have two categories. That's what we're looking at here. Is it interesting or not interesting to you, for example? So let's say you're scrolling through Twitter all the time and you find yourself wasting all your time on Twitter. Actually, Twitter might be a bad example because they're pretty good about blocking bots. And maybe that's just more for posting, I'm not sure, or for hearting or whatever, interacting with posts. Like I've gotten blocked off Twitter before trying to do something like this, trying to get posts. Not blocked per se, but just like, we're detecting unusual activity. You need to wait 4 hours. So I think they have an API that they want people to pay them for. But let's take this for example. If you have like a site that you go to regularly, like this is an amazing site. It's called Archive, spelled ARXIV, where researchers post science articles. And there's also Anna's Archive, which is amazing. That would be hard to crawl through as well because they use Cloudflare. A lot of sites have preventions for things like Selenium WebDriver, which is an awesome piece of code. And this is the kind of thing that you can just ask ChatGPT, like, write me a Python script that uses Selenium WebDriver to go over this website and scroll all the way down and collect all of these types of links. So the page that I wanted here, let's go to AI. Now there's at least one page that has like, we could click on the next button, but I know I think it was when you searched. Like let's search for music. Okay, it does have 5 pages. I thought it was just auto scroll, but I was wrong. So let's just take this scroll part out and collect all of these types of links. So we'll put the page in here. This is just how powerful this tool is. And ChatGPT isn't the only contender. Like I said, there's a lot of different AI models. Some are much cheaper. Very few are much better though. Oh, I clicked the wrong button. Shoot. Okay, so write me a Selenium WebDriver script in Python that goes to this page. Put that there. Once the page loads, find all of these types of links and print them out. So what I want is this. And then I'll put a note. This is the ID and will change, so it won't be exactly this. And then we could say, once the page loads, find, okay, then click the next page button. The pagination elements look like this. And I can just copy this HTML down here. And I think that includes the next button. Well, let's go up a level here. And then I would usually also note here, the page has jQuery loaded, so we can use that. All right, let's just hit enter. And it just gives me a Python script. So let me put together a thing that we can run this in with. So all it takes is you just have to download Python off the internet, off the Python website, obviously, and then make a .py file using something like Notepad++ if you're on Windows. Notepad++, I meant to say. Let's see, crawl archive.py, I'll call it. And here's what I'm looking at. Just get the full path. I usually just use the full path to my Python executable. Gives me the most control. And then what I do is I just copy this. So I probably don't have the dependency yet. Need to get that. Let's see. Install. I usually have like an installer. That's not the one. So this is the way I end up usually doing Python install stuff. So we'll paste that instead of transformers, which I already have installed. I've got to download. I think it's called Selenium. Yep. Oh, that's down here, sorry. That's what I'm looking at. And so I'm just going to copy this. No idea if it's going to work. But one of the key points here is that these models keep getting better and better. I remember talking to somebody who was like, yeah, I'm getting all my work done with ChatGPT, and I think it was like 3.5 when I talked to him. And he still probably is a programmer. And I was in disbelief. I'm sure many people are in disbelief when I say that ChatGPT is useful and you can actually get a lot of your work done super easily with it. And you're like, oh, not my work. My work is too complex. That's what I thought. I'm like, yeah, I've been coding for a long time. I really don't think that there's going to be a chatbot that can do my work. And then I tried it out. I'm like, there's a chatbot that can do my work. So the question too is like, okay, it definitely hits a wall sometimes. It fails sometimes. It takes a lot of finessing, a lot of picky, like, oh, I got this error, do it again, et cetera, et cetera. But if it gets better and better and makes fewer and fewer errors and it can achieve bigger and bigger tasks in one go, which I expect it to, that's going to be a total game changer. So let's try this out here. Might not work. I think I have to probably point it at my... So it opened up a Chrome browser here. It went to the page. Okay, it's on page 2 now. It's on page 3 now. So we'll move this off. Yeah, we'll move this off screen so we can look and see what the code's doing. So it's printing it out right here. Look, it found all these PDFs. Now, granted, this is probably a very common use of web, or of Selenium WebDriver, to crawl ARXIV. It's pronounced archive. There's probably, other sites that are less common, but that is pretty amazing if you ask me. That it did that in like 2 seconds. So I'm just trying to make sure people are aware of this technology. So you can't be like, well, nobody told me. This technology exists and it's very powerful. And okay, so let me show you my next idea. So where was I going with this, right? Okay, so Control C, by the way, kills a script that's running in your terminal, at least on Windows. So what I wanted to do next is, let's go up to this screen. I wanted to use BERT to decide, is this of interest or not to me? For each of the items, is it of interest or not? And actually, I was going to go about this a different way, trying to think of how I want to do it at this point. I mean, I like how quickly Selenium is able to go through there and just save all of them. So maybe what we should do is change the script. So come over here. One thing I could do is maybe try to make, I already have a auto reader helper, which is what I was going to use this script for. So let's just put it in here. So if I do file, save a copy. It should be in that folder now. Okay, so I checked the box and now it's in my project. And I can just come over here to make changes, drag it over. So I can say this is the code. Actually, I'm going to put this into a global variable called overview. Globals overview. This is the code I am working on to help me automatically find the most interesting papers for me to read from archive.org. And so now I can just go to preview, globals overview. Again, some bugs in there. Let me just try refresh. Well, I need to actually save this query. Wrong button. Save the query. I'll just do like full Python code. So this just helps me save it. I could just copy and paste it. I'm just kind of playing around with my new tool here. So now I refresh the page and I can load this up. For some reason that global placeholder's not working now, which is kind of annoying. Oh, wow. So it just nuked it somehow. Got to fix that bug. Working on a Python script to get all the papers for a search term in RxIV. So it says it saved, and it's saved now. So if we go to make changes, or if I load the query, that'll help if it's not an empty string. Okay, so now I can just copy this. Long story short, come over here, paste it, and then I'm going to say, I need to also get the title of each paper. Please save the results in a CSV file. One file per run, the file should have this format. Title, PDF link, interest. And I'll say just leave the interest column blank. And that'll end up being what I use the model to try to predict my interest. And I'd probably end up using a database at some point. But I need to give it some more information, because how is it going to get the title? So let's look at this. This is my link. Also, let's put this here. Also, I want the search term to be a command line parameter. So when I run it, I'm going to also pass it, in this case, the word music. But this is the link that we're loading up. So what I'm going to show it is what an example result is in the listing. So these buttons here are your best friend if you're a web developer or a web scraper. Console, inspector, debugger, and network are the main ones. To find the titles, here is the HTML for each search result. And we'll just fire this off. So we can see in real time, it's demonstrating that it has a pretty impressive reasoning facility. It's probably the wrong way to pronounce that. So let's copy this, go back over here. So let's see before and after. So it added 25 lines. And I'm going to put up here now the word music. So let's run this again. So it's opening it up. Let's see if it gets... Well, I probably should have changed the search term. Okay, that's impressive. So where's the CSV being saved? So it looks like it's writing it to... So it's probably going to be whatever folder I ran this from, which is going to be not really where I want it to be. It's probably right in my user folder. And there's a lot of... Oh, it broke. So... no such element error. And we can see, okay, the last one that it worked on was audiobox colon. Audiobox. Got a lot of, oh, it's up here. Let's go back up here. Now, which page are we on? So I don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty of this one task. My point is that you can just delegate off work to it. And it can really help us achieve a lot more in terms of implementing our big vision ideas. So I'm not sure, I should probably put a page number so we could debug this. Okay, so 7, or is that, okay, I'm misreading that, sorry. But what I can do is just paste the error message. So if you're anything like me, when I first started programming, the error messages can be kind of daunting and intimidating. Even though they're very helpful a lot of times once you figure out how to read them, because it's just whoever developed the language that you're using is telling you, like, okay, here's what went wrong. You need to fix this because we can't continue because there's this problem. But what's great now is even if these are daunting, like we don't have to read this at this point. We can just paste this into our conversation with ChatGPT. And I definitely like being able to use a tool like this where I can just copy the latest of the code so I can start new chats, because there is kind of a trade-off with continuing a conversation you have with ChatGPT, which can be helpful and it gives it more context, but also it gets a little bit confusing, and I think the performance goes down, especially on 4.0 versus 4 on these longer threads where you just have lots of back and forth. But you can definitely get away with a number of back and forths. So it's telling me that it changed error handling to catch any exceptions. Adds a little bit more weight. All right, let's just try it again here. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I do want to show another example, which I think is important, and that is database stuff. Databases are one of the best tools that we have. And I really like the pairing of programming in databases plus AI helping us write the code and the database stuff, because they can't take that away from us. I mean, they might find some way, but that actually would be a boon to humanity if somehow like they outlaw using AI generated code or something. That'd actually be a great thing, because then nobody could use AI code, and all the jobs they were trying to automate might just become, I don't see that happening. I think that they're going to allow people to use AI code because it's just code. It doesn't really matter who wrote it. So what's great though is that they're going to try to get people to, well, this isn't great, but they're going to try to get people to use ChatGPT for everything. They'll probably have like, build your own system in ChatGPT and let us do all the heavy lifting for you. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to write any code. You don't have to do anything. And while that might be good for some people, I'm not saying don't use it. I don't want to use it. I want to have full control over my code, my databases. And I like that once I can extract the logic from ChatGPT, they're just helpless at that point, because I'm running off and I'm using it. I don't have to ask their permission anymore. We got the code. So interestingly, we're seeing some errors here every once in a while. No such element. So it's trying to find basically a link with an href with a PDF. So maybe some of these don't have PDFs. But it's not the end of the world. At least now it's not breaking. It's just telling us, moving on. I could look into it, but not really the point of this video. So let's see. There's another... It's 30% of the way through. So we'll just let that run in the background so we can see what happens. But let's do another example here. Let's think about databases. So I already have PostgreSQL installed on my computer. So if you don't know what a database is, it allows us to store millions and millions of records in a very structured format. And that gives us huge opportunities. So for example, on my computer here, since I have PostgreSQL installed, I can just open up a PowerShell or command line and go psql, that's the program name, -u Postgres. That's basically says use this user, special user that comes along with the installation when you open up this program. So we hit enter. I hit a wrong button there. Okay, so now we open it up. It defaults to the user's special database, which we don't really want here. What I want instead is to connect to, I forgot what it's called. We can do /l, see all my databases. AI research is the one I want. So if I do /c, that's connect AI research. And you can ask ChatGPT about all this because you probably don't know. Back in the day, I had to like read guides and figure this stuff out. And there were sites like Stack Overflow where people would ask each other questions, and it was really a help. But now ChatGPT makes it so much more conversational, and you can just paste your errors in there, etc. So I'm going to do /dt. This will show me which databases or which tables I have in here. So I have these two tables. The second is just a copy of the first. This is the table that I'm using for this project that I've been building. think it's called Search Sculptor. So for example, well, this actually doesn't use that database. This is for quotes from Jesus, which is a very interesting data set because I've always been interested in trying to read all the quotes that are attributed to Jesus in the Bible. And this has helped me kind of knock out two birds with one stone. But, when I actually did this, I realized that this model that I've been telling people about, this embedding alternative to, say, ChatGPT's embedding models, MXBAI, isn't that good. It has some problems. So as much as I hate it, it seems like ChatGPT might have the better embedding model here. Because the reason that I don't like this model is, look, if you look at the bottom right, these are all the quotes that are in the yellow here. See all the quotes? They're very short little quotes. But over on the right here, they're really long quotes. So it seems like there's this big bias to put all the long quotes together and all the short quotes together, which isn't what I wanted. I want like them grouped by semantic meaning. So let's switch over. I have one called old.php. I think it's, no. What did I call it? Oh, okay, I can make it called old. Okay, so this is using, and it might have the same issue. These might just be more similar in length, although I do think this clustering works better. This is actually with the Rig Veda, which is a very old book. Yeah, I guess it's a book. It started as hymns, so sung out hymns in by the ancient Aryans would sing them. Interesting content for sure. And then it was written down in Sanskrit in a very old book, one of the oldest extant books. So that's the data set here, and that's actually what this database is for, hymn embeddings. So for example, I can copy that. I can do /d plus, I can paste this down, and this tells us all of the fields that are in this database. So think of it like an Excel spreadsheet. These would be like the headers in the spreadsheet. And so then we have all these queries that we can do, like select hymn, let's do hymn ID, comma, text from hymn embeddings. So I'm telling it to select 2 out of all those. Okay, so there's some issue with the, not with the data, but with the client that I'm using to access it. So let's just get the hymn IDs and the embeddings. And not the best formatted thing. Still looking at the headers. So I don't want to spend too much time just scrolling down. But you get the idea. There's some databases in here. So what if we wanted to make a database for this task here? Let's just go back to our chat that we already have on the topic. Where did it go? So let's say, can you recommend a PostgreSQL database table for this data? And I definitely recommend PostgreSQL. A lot of people will say to use MySQL, which is also a very impressive piece of software. But in my book, PostgreSQL wins the day. So it's saying to make a database with an ID with a data type serial, which means it's a number, like an int, but it starts and it just keeps counting. So the first one you enter will be number 1. Then it goes to number 2, number 3, just automatically handles that. So everything will have a unique number. So then later when you have like a record, say it's ID 34, you can just do select all from archive_papers where ID equals 34. And this right here where we mark this column a primary key, this makes it so it's super fast to look it up. It's all designed just like the index of a book, where it's super fast to find something for any given thing in your index. So it makes a title, PDF link, interest. I'm also glad that it used text for all of these. Sometimes it'll try to do like varchar and pick a number. That means that it's the same as text, but it limits you to that number of characters, which can be good. It's way more structured and organized and efficient. But the problem is if you need to use more than that number of characters that you allotted. So text is just like this open-ended thing. You can have as long of text as you want. Super convenient. It's definitely the most recommended. But what's great is you can have, oh look, it's even, it's giving us an example Python script. I thought it was going to enhance the other one to insert in, but it'd be easy enough for me to turn around and ask it to do such a thing. So I can just copy this. I'm just trying to show people how easy this stuff is. And I can just paste it right here. It's always good to save this somewhere in like a Google Docs or a text document because you might need to come back to it. So now we have another database. I can do /DT. You can see the third database table in here. And we can say, okay, give me some example queries. Give me some example queries for this new database table. For example, an insert example, an update example, a delete example, and a select example. Now I could already do this off the back of my hand because I've just used PostgreSQL so much, but I'm just trying to show you that you can really master entirely new technologies just by asking it to guide you. And what I like to do is it helps me get boilerplate code instead of typing it all out. Even if I already know what I need to type out, it's like, okay, this is a lifesaver, at least time saver. So I can just copy this, come over here, we paste it. Okay, we insert it into the table. So I can just do select all from and there it is. And then I can delete it, delete from, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to remind people that there are already these amazing tools and we can use them. All right, so let's go back to, well, actually, let me just remind people what I was trying to do. I think it'd probably be too involved to try to do it at this point, although I could show you the example I already have. Let's do that, actually. So if I open up this, I'm trying to remember where I saved this. I think my documents. Here we go. So again, this is available in full, complete with the documentation on my Substack for supporters. If you want it, I think it'll save you a bunch of time if you have any task like this. So let's do, which one here? The train model is the key one. So the way this works is I have a data set called yes/no book data, which is actually a pretty good analog for this example here, where I'm trying to automatically get it to, let's say, email me every morning with the key items from the last day that's been published onto this site called ARXIV, which is where all these scientists and researchers post their findings. The state-of-the-art models, the new techniques, any sort of benchmarking, just all sorts of interesting stuff and not interesting stuff. So I don't want a list of everything because it's overwhelming, unnecessary, and a waste of time. But let's say here, let me show you the example data set. This comes with the code if you're all interested in supporting the channel. And I intend to also put out lots more code for supporters on there. So if you're at all interested in learning or enhancing your arsenal of tools, you can be a supporter for like, I think 14 cents a day it comes out to. Or you can just pay $5 and cancel right away, download what you need. Okay, so this is the example here. It has an extra column here for subjects. So the title, the subjects, the interest. Yes or no for interest. And in machine learning, they call it features and labels. So in our example here, these are the features, title and subject, and then the label is interest. For regression tasks, they have something called target, which would be like the number we're trying to guess. And also in the code that I put out there that I didn't have time to cover in the video that I put out because I hadn't developed it yet, but as soon as I published it, I realized that BERT can also take in, I think it's on my other computer, but it can take in, I could download it off my Substack, but yeah, I do want to do that actually. I'm sure I already downloaded it, but it can take in, instead of just saying yes or no, you can say, oh, that's a 75% yes and 25% no, which is a bit kind of weird, right? Because we're either interested or not, usually. But if we want to distinguish between like, we're super interested in this, or, yeah, I guess I'm interested, but it's nothing to write home about, kind of thing. So let me just, I downloaded my new files again. Also, I'm realizing that the other script that we were running is finished. I can open this up. So you can see it's actually pretty similar to this other script that or this other data set that we're working on. Title, PDF link. Now, there are no interest columns here yet. And this is something that I'm building into this other project. This one is a massive project that I'm working on. Let me just kind of pivot to this because it's a good example for this. So this is a project that I'm calling Discover Grid. It's the tentative title. And for example, I have the architects and engineers for 9/11 truth data set here. Super interesting data set, 3,256 rows. And, I can search in here for, some of these might not be great to search for because I have these other columns. Oh, actually what I can do is I can search for statement. So I can just search one of the fields. So I'm just going to search their actual testimonies. And let's search for any mention of the word thermite. You can see there's 142 experts who mentioned thermite specifically. And so I can scroll through here. So I already put out one super long video. It might have been like 6 hours, 10 hours. I forgot how long. Where I used some, and it wasn't the best AI voice ever, but I just wanted to have like a video that people can share and be like, look at this. Thousands of experts, architects and engineer experts are calling for a new investigation. And they brought up a ton. There's just so many great points in here. So I just put them back to back to back. I had the whole screenshot of the testimony and then the speech, or the speech overlaid. But what I want to do is find like, okay, sure, I could read out over 10 hours and no one's going to watch the whole thing through 3,500 testimonies. Or I think a much better is find like categories and be like, okay, this is the controlled demolition gems. These are like the cream of the crop testimonies from these experts. And it's like 30 minutes. And I can read it out with my own voice, or, yeah, that's probably the best, right? So that's what I want to, that's what I'm striving for here. So what I built into the system once I found BERT, because BERT is amazing. And by the way, there's another improvement on BERT that I found. I know I've got so many tangents going here, but it's called debugging v3. debugging v3 base. You can see 2.3 million downloads last month alone of Hugging Face. Improving debugging, which is already improving on BERT. debugging improves the BERT and RoBERTa models using disentangled attention and enhanced mask decoder. So it outperforms even Roberta on a majority of NLU tasks. Now, I'm not sure if the task that we want, which is text classification, is one of those tasks. I would imagine it is. But it's real easy to switch the two out. You just put a different model name in. But let's continue, because I've got a number of threads. I want to see if I can finish them all. It's unlikely, but possible. So the way I have it here is I have this button here, AI Text Classify. So my first idea, there's a history of this if you want to go back and watch the other streams, but my idea was, what if I had, that's the wrong button, this tool here, so AI prompt bulk AI jobs. And what if I could say, like, is this testimony about controlled demolition? Question mark. And I put here in curly braces to say it's a placeholder. And you can see it filled in here. The statement underscore 911, which is the field name for the testimony. And I can try with like random prompts, pick the model that I use. Let's try 4.0. Here's one that says thermite. Let's keep randomizing it. Find one that's really good. Did research on nano AI, FEXO, etc. nano layers produced by physical vapor deposition for joining applications at Dartmouth. Oh, let's also add here first, last. So that's you can see who said this now. And there's one other field, I forgot what it's called. Additional prof info. So this is somebody who does metallurgical engineering. Graduated in 1960. So talk about an expert. So let's add the word expert here. Is this expert testimony about controlled demolition? And then I can try it here. Try this prompt. And this for me is like a sanity check. And I love this feature because I don't want to fire off 3,500 AI tasks. Like I really wouldn't even want to, well, it doesn't matter actually as much if you have like a free program on your computer and you can just run it, right? That's not the end of the world. But if it's going to charge you for every token, every million tokens that is, I want to make sure that I have the fields filled in right. I want to make sure I pick the best model so I can just try all the different models, find the cheapest one that does great, or splurge on the best one. So it says here, it suggests that nanomaterials, specifically nanothermite, were used to cause damage and cut supporting columns. Franklin Lemke is presented as having a background in metallurgical engineering and experience with nanocomposites. So a lot of this is like poo-pooing the idea, right? Because it's ChatGPT. But let's say I went to, I don't know, Llama 3 on OpenRouter. Try that one out. A fascinating piece of expert testimony. Yes, this appears to be expert testimony related to controlled demolition, specifically the use of nanomaterials in the destruction of the World Trade Center towers on 9/11. Here's a breakdown of the testimony. So you can see like just that different model choice leads to like a much better response. And so why would I want to pay through the nose for to be gaslit from OpenAI, right? I wouldn't. Based on his examination of dust samples from all three towers, he concludes that nanomaterials were used to damage the floors after the aircraft impact. I don't know if he says that. Actually, he does say that, after aircraft impact. Not sure if I agree about that part, but we'll put that aside. Resulting in smoke clouds containing Al2O3, aluminum oxide, in micron-sized spherical iron particles. He also claims that the supporting columns were cut using nanothermite. So this is interesting because, this was the approach that I tried first. And it was hit and miss because, you can see right here the remnants of my initial attempts. I would do, these are the two attempts that I tried on this. You can see I named this field related to controlled demo, and this one controlled demo quotes. And so I try to get it to say right off the bat yes or no, because that would make it super easy to parse and to see what it decided. And then it gives me more analysis after that first word. And you can see in both of these attempts, basically doing text classification using AI large language models. At least for this example, which is a different example than the one we were just reading. For example, this one says, I witnessed 9/11 from across the river in the studio of my architectural practice, and am in agreement with all the points that are put forth by architects and engineers for 9/11 truth. Of particular interests in requiring additional investigation, thermite discovery in debris, pulverization of concrete, molten steel, explosive charges observed along building perimeter prior to freefall, wreckage descent. So my point here is that we oftentimes come across extremely interesting data sets that we could, spend a long time manually going through and trying to find the gems and sorting through it, which would be a good use of time until we find out that there's this amazing technology that we can plug into. So that's where Deberta and BERT and the LLMs can really help us out. And it's not just this example, right? This is just one example. But then, okay, so that's using LLMs. Then I found, there's something called BERT that'll do this probably even better. And what's great about BERT is it's free. And it runs locally on our computer. So I had to build it into this software, right? I had to. And this is something else I'm going to be putting out to the public. My plan here is, and I know I'm going back on my word a little bit. I said I was going to put this out open source, and I do want to put it out for free. But what I'm going to do initially is I'll put it out for like a month or two. And anybody who wants it for free can get it for free for a non-commercial license, or you can pay to support this work and get it and use it commercially. But then after that, like 1 or 2 months window, I might close down the free access. As in, you can continue to use it for free if you've downloaded it. But I don't want to promise that forever and ever it'll be free, because I just can't afford that. But I do want to put this out there because I think it's going to supercharge research. And I'm going to put it out for a very reasonable price. And also, like I said, I'm going to put it out for free for the people who rock with this channel and watch and stay engaged and are aware enough that I'm giving it out for free for the first couple months. All right, but my point here, I'm trying to finish a number of threads. My point here is that I added this new button here, AI text classify. So I already have this example for what we're doing here, but I could add more. But let's just use the one we already have. So the template for the text, it could involve multiple fields, right? If there are different fields that we want to include together, like the example we were looking at earlier, title and subjects are two fields that we might want to merge together. But in this case, we only have the one that I really care about, statement 911. Although we could also add in here, for example, the LLM analysis. Like we could put the summary here, although it's not really updating. That's not working too well, probably because I already have it saved. Got to fix these bugs, but the point here is that I have the classifications. So these are the categories that the buckets that we're going to put things into, either no or yes, right? Is it related to controlled demolition? No or yes. And we're just basically sorting based off the statement they made. And so the way it works is I have these little drop downs that automatically pop up in our listing. So usually for everything else in the listing, we can just double click it, make any changes, any adjustments, and click done. really easy way to update the text content. But for these text classification, there's just these two options plus the no selection, the blank. So this I would say is yes, related to controlled demolition. And I can just go along here. This next one here. I want to know why a very unique explosive, nanothermite, was found in numerous samples from the area. So that one we could kind of put in various, we could say, no, it's not really related to controlled demolition, but I think it is, right? Very unique explosive. Why did we find this? Here's one that says, I find the official narrative of symmetrical structural collapse of World Trade Center 1 and 2 as a consequence of being struck by airliners and subsequent contents fires, and the collapse of WT7 solely as a consequence of contents fires, to be unpersuasive. Nor does it account for the energy required to produce the blanket of extremely fine dust containing nanothermite which spread over lower Manhattan. That's what I love about these engineer experts, is a lot of us are just like looking at it and we're like, that doesn't make any sense. There's obviously bombs in that building. Look, it just blew up and turned into a big cloud of dust. But the architects and engineers are like, oh, that would take way too much energy. Look at these equations. And they bring up a lot of good examples and make it plain that something very, very wrong has happened here. And by the way, if anyone's interested in this topic, which I think everybody should be interested in this topic, I have a huge playlist on my Odyssey channel, odyssey.com/@timtruth. Show you how to get there. You can see we're live at the moment. Right here. You can see I've got this 14 video playlist with some really interesting stuff. I like this video here. I was thinking about reposting this. The 9/11 audio analysis is very interesting. There's some evidence there that, like, I'm trying to be careful because I'm on YouTube, but you can hear the same woman scream, "Oh my God!" in like multiple shots. The same scream. It's like they designed these shots to some extent, right? Some would say to a very large extent. But it's not just the visuals. And we're such visual beings that when we look at these things, especially the content of these shots, you know, it's so drastic and like just like really intense to look at. But then you analyze the audio, it's like, is that a reversed cymbal? Did you guys reverse a cymbal crash to make it sound like that plane hit the building? What does that mean? And there's a lot of interesting audio analysis and it's especially interesting because it should have a pretty consistent sound. The same plane flying into the building. Why is it from different vantage points the sound is like drastically different? All right, I won't get into what I think about that. Okay, so the point here is the dust contained nanothermite. And they find that the consequence of it collapsing due to fires is unpersuasive. So that's kind of in between yes and no, I would say. So I'll just not answer that one for now. But the idea is I could go through here and mark each of them. These are what are called manual labels. I'm manually labeling the ones that I want it to train on. And then I run the training script. And then I run the prediction script. And the way I have this behind the scenes is I have, for every text classification, I have 3 fields in the database. One of the fields is the manual label. That's what we're just setting here. The second is the prediction. That is from the latest model, the latest and greatest trained model. And then the third is a JSON object, which means it's structured data, but it can be more complex. And what I want to put in that column, it's still a work in progress, but I want to have like a whole history of the predictions made for each of these items. For each of the models that we've trained along the way. Because hopefully the models get better and better and better. And usually because we've started labeling more and more of the items and incorporating the system ratings. I'm trying to just make this as seamless and as effective as possible. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing it. But that's my point, is in building into this, because this is such a common task, and it's great that we don't have to pay ChatGPT to help us categorize text. For whatever reason, Microsoft and Google have put out Deberta and Berta respectively. I should say Deberta and Bert respectively, which excel at these text classification tasks. So I say we put it to use. All right, so, and there's other things that Deberta can do here. Let's see what this does over here. I think it does next word prediction. Like the goal of life is mask. Let's see what it predicts here. The goal of life is compute. I don't know what that means. Makes me question the accuracy of this thing. Maybe that's a trained model. Let's see. She went to the mask. Just trying to pick like an obvious one. She went to the Christ. She went to the... That's very strange. Okay, so I don't really use it for next token prediction, next word prediction. And I was thinking that would be a better demo than it was, but moving on. So we can also do this on our CSV scripts, which is why I put this out on Substack to any supporters. Send me an email if anyone has any questions or has a hard time running it. But I figured people probably have CSV files or spreadsheets, and a spreadsheet can always be saved off as a CSV. And so this is probably the way most people would want to access these models. So take this example. We can say for each of our books in our list, are we interested or not? And for this example, I was interested in things having to do with etymology or the history of places that factor into English etymology. And so I can open up actually I already have it open. Let's try running this from the command line. So this is the part of the script this is the script that trains the model. And then we're left with like a 0.5 GB trained model that we can then make a bunch of predictions. And while that runs, I can open up this other version that's also in the same article on my Substack. Let's put a new folder here. Text classifier new. All right, there we go. And so the difference here in the second version is instead of just saying yes or no, I'm interested or not, I can actually say how interested I am. So that's the way I read this, is like interest yes is basically just how interested I am. And then interest no is 1 minus that. So deep learning, 0. History of Europe, 0.75. English etymology dictionary, 1. So I'm 100% interested in that. Because this whole exercise was helping me find like the most interesting books for etymology research. Okay, but by the way, this script is running now. This is the simpler of the two examples that just has a yes or no. And what's amazing is we can see it getting more and more right. That was the first epoch there. First training cycle. Here's the second training cycle. And for each cycle, there's 2 stages. The training round in the verification round. And now it's starting to get almost everything right. There's still a couple wrong here and there. And what's interesting too is the ones that it gets wrong is still telling to us. Because we can look at those, and for a lot of these, you could be like, well, that's not the end of the world for that to be a yes. And I can see why I would come to that conclusion. But it's just amazing how quickly it can learn these data sets. And by the way, this is BERT. And it keeps getting these same two ones wrong. Contributions of ancient Greeks to mathematics. For some reason, it keeps predicting yes. And then Roman architectural influences. But it definitely is learning more and more. And then for example, if we keep seeing that, all it would take is us to really specify in the training that no, we're not interested in that. Right? So that's easily remedied. Also, one thing I wanted to show here is here's the text classifier train model script. Now, I'm not sure if it's sufficient to just change the base model here, but it might be as easy as just putting deberta v3 base here. Let me see if the other script... So we probably have to change it in both of these two spots, which we can try here. Although this is kind of the source. I don't want to change this too much actually right now, but what's pretty awesome about this library here called Transformers from Hugging Face is we can just swap out the name of the model here, copy this, and we should just be able to replace this like that. And it should just work. So it'd be very easy to switch to deberta from BERT. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show is this. I kind of already showed what I wanted to about scored. I just wanted to point out, well, let's open up this actually. Sorry for being so scatterbrained. And again, this is why I'm really not hating AI, because AI is helping me like achieve so much more than I can without it in terms of writing scripts and figuring things out and seeking knowledge and the truth. But I do think, just like YouTube was a trap, there's a big trap here, and that is that they want to equate like these productivity hacks, these improvements to productivity. They want to somehow use that as like a political ends to communism. They would be like, well, obviously we should have the AI run everything. And wink, wink, this is really AI when it tells us that the climate is changing unless we give the communists all the power. Tax people more. Right? So I think we can see where that's going and why that be a bad thing. So I'm still trying to find this. Where did it go? Text classifier. Windows is so slow. Okay, I think I can just use this. So here's the other Python script also included on that download from my Substack to supporters. And thank you to the people who do support this channel. That's not right. Hopefully there's no bug in the actual version I have up on the site. I'll definitely fix this after the stream if there is. Let me check the download again. That shouldn't be like that. I know let's see. Well, that sucks. I know I ran this a couple times to see if it worked. This should be yes, no book data scored. Although, let's see what it does here. Yeah, this is weird. I gotta go check my other computer to see. But for example, the trained model here. No, the model trainer. It's a little confusing, but here's the other one. And I'll update this if you just check back in tomorrow or something. I'll have this fixed if there was an error. So this is one of the key new changes which is in there, which is good. Predict labels with confidences. So instead of just telling us yes or no, if it guesses a yes or if it guesses a no, it'll actually tell us, 88% yes, 12% no. So it gives us more granularity, which I think is very interesting. So we can see like how sure it is that we're interested. But there's also supposed to be, and I think it's in this, I just don't think the example here, because it should be, instead of label type simple, it should be label type scored. You can see the code is already accounting for this, but it's really weird that the example here doesn't seem to be right. But sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent. The point is that either when you're making predictions or when you're training the model with BERT or DeBERT v3, you don't have to put it as simple as just which is the label for each item. In this case, yes or no. But it could be a whole bunch of labels that you're choosing from. Instead, we can also just tell it, here's the percentages for each. So it kind of puts a little bit of weight to our answers. So like we can say, this one's a very strong signal, and this one's kind of like, oh, it's like 50-50, or somewhere in between. All right, so getting off on a tangent there. Let's get back on track. So my point through all that is that we can use that technique, maybe enhance it with the database, which we mentioned a couple minutes ago. And I mean, I'm seeing a bug here. This is wrong. So so there's a problem here with, and let's just throw this back at ChatGPT, because earlier we were asking it to use Selenium WebDriver to automatically crawl through and so let's just say there's an error, or there's a problem with the CSV. Each record should have its own line, and there are a number of extraneous, extra weird lines like so. And I'll mark this one. What is this? And we'll just fire this off. So it's really important to be picky, whether you're writing English, whether you're writing programming code. It takes a lot of, going back and forth sometimes to really get it right. But then we can just copy this. And you might remember back from when we were building this tool together, or when I was doing streams showing it being built, we'd have this problem whereby it would omit sections. Like that was one of the key challenges back in the day programming with GPT-4, is it would just totally omit certain sections and say, put your existing code here. And if you didn't see that, you could lose a bunch of features, and it was disastrous. So that's one of the obvious things they changed here with GPT-4o, is it's way more verbose, and it puts all the code. Sometimes it's too verbose, and I was kind of starting to like the way ChatGPT-4 did it, and make workarounds to it and stuff. But I think it's good that people won't just lose huge swaths of their code. So what I can do is come back to this script that we were writing earlier, paste that here, and they claim that there's an improvement to the logic. So I can just fire this off again. Oh, I didn't put a search term. Okay. Let's try something where it'll have fewer results. Music diffusion. Actually, let's do music. What was it called? There's a neural network type that's well suited for music. Let me search this. What's a neural network type that's well suited for music generation? Long short-term memory or something? RNNs, recurrent neural networks. That's what I was looking for, RNN. I've been trying to learn all these different model types and start building from scratch different examples. I think it is really helpful for us to fully understand these tools. And I'm sure there's going to be tons and tons of open source projects built around these tools. But having a good understanding, really, I'm pretty sure will go a far way. All right, so let me see if I can... let's just see if that fixed it. So again, that's one of my key messages is be picky. If there's an issue, whine about it, be the squeaky wheel. And it looks like we fixed that, or there's no more examples at least. Here, so my point is we could leverage BERT or DeBerta and traverse vast data sets and just say, well, what are we most interested in? Let's train a model, and then let's automate some sort of a Selenium WebDriver, or what works better a lot of times. This would work for Twitter. If let's just do a search here. Let's ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT is usually better than Google search at this point. Let's see, does Twitter block Selenium WebDriver scripts? I'm guessing it would. Although they have tons of bots on Twitter. There's different ways to do it, and I think that like Twitter has like backdoors and is responsible for a lot of these bots. To get people chugging poison. But what is great is if you're just so how do I do this? Let's go to Twitter. How do we work around that? Well, one thing we can do is, I was searching here, LLM minfaves 3. I just like to keep an eye on this search term. So if we go to the console, also something I found that was interesting that might help us here on Twitter is if you hit J and K, it toggles through each of them without having to scroll down, which I'm not sure if we'd be able to, it'd probably catch us if we try to do that programmatically. But what I would do is I'd put a listener that would regularly check to see what tweets are in the display here. So let's inspect this. There's an article. So you can see all these weird classes. It's very hard to leverage this. But basically, if we do document.get elements by tag name, article. There's 3 of them here. And then if we scroll down, there's 4 of them. So what I would do is I would write like a timer, or it's called an interval, which is code that'll run just every, say, certain number of milliseconds. So I could do it every 1,000 milliseconds. That'd be once every second. And these articles have an ID. No, they don't. What? It's so weird. What is all this crap? So a lot of these sites make it hard to do what we're trying to do here, but it's definitely possible. Let's see, going through here. They could save so much. It's just so bloated. Okay, so here's like a tweet user avatar, which is kind of interesting. That's something that we could probably leverage. Or let's say this one here, which is the right side of the equation, which is going to be the tweet itself. Let's go up to the, oh, probably lost my spot. Should do it this way. So this has an ID that we could leverage. Whenever there's an ID on an element, that means it's unique across the entire page. Oh, I see I'm falling behind on chat too. I'll read those out. So put any questions you have in the chat. I won't spend too much time here, but what I'm saying is using dev tools, we can devise logic that we just paste here that'll just run in the background. And for example, that was what I was messing around with on this project here. I would ping basically data over to this query.php file. And so whenever I come across something, so I was first thinking about doing it here, where I could do the labeling and the data collection at the same pass. So what I was thinking about is do a search, and instead of having Selenium WebDriver go through and save everything to a CSV, like our example quickly solved itself with the help of ChatGPT there. But what I was thinking is, okay, I paste the code here. Basically, it would do like a window.set interval, and then first parameter is a function, which is the logic. Second parameter is how much time. I could put 1,000. And then here I could say, basically, get all the new elements that have shown up in the viewport here. And then if I scroll down, more elements will show up in the viewport. And send those off to the database, create any records that aren't there yet. Then I would want to listen for any clicks I make to PDF. So one productivity hack, life hack, is if you're on a web page and you want to open something in a new tab, you can click on it with the middle mouse button. And that'll open it up in a new tab. So what I wanted to do is, when I'm scrolling down here, have it automatically say, okay, Tim has seen this, and unless I click PDF, it goes down as a no. Tim's not interested in that article. But as soon as I click open this PDF, I'm going to count that as a yes, I am interested. But then maybe I might want to reverse that later, for example. But that was my idea, is to do it via the console and having a recurring task running here. So just to show you, I can put console.log, which is how you print things out. Test, and you can see this prints out every second. Actually, you can see it's doubling up here, this little badge here. So it's kind of hard to see. It's not doing a new line each time because it's the same exact text. But same thing we could do for Twitter. And although it still gets kind of tricky, because say we train a model using this off Twitter, so it knows if we're going to be interested in a tweet or not. Well, how do we use that really? We could theoretically open up a search or something, or the main feed, and maybe just start nixing, start deleting posts that we're not interested in. And then when we scroll through, it'll just be the ones that we are interested in. That'd be that's like the best way that I can think of. But as far as it sending us like like an email in the morning, oh, go check out these tweets, then the problem would be you'd have to have some way for it to access your Twitter feed in a way that Twitter's not going to block us. And the trick I showed you earlier with Selenium WebDriver isn't going to work as well for these big tech sites. Okay, on to the comments in the chat. Shout out to everybody who's joined us in the chat. Let's see what I missed. Again, I agree with Andrea, who says we need to figure out how to make our own AI LLMs and other tools. Absolutely. Andrea also says, wonder what its limitations will be. Google was very useful previously. Now it seems limited. Yes, it almost seems intentional. And also there's this big thing, I'm sure you've heard people like running their mouths about Google putting AI search results. I can probably show you a couple examples here. I look at this as a psyop. Let me just search like Google AI search. Like they were telling people, like someone was asking Google, like, my cheese isn't sticking to my pizza. What do I do? And it said, use non-toxic glue. And then people are like, oh my gosh, look, it's so dangerous. There's another one I saw. I don't know how many of these are just faked. It'd be so easy to fake these and go viral. But there's one that was like, how many cigarettes should a pregnant woman smoke every day? And obviously this is terrible advice. Everyone knows it's terrible advice. But it was saying like, then the blurb at the top said, pregnant women should smoke 3 to 4 cigarettes a day, or something crazy like that. Or somebody said, I'm depressed. And it said, one Reddit user suggests jumping off the bridge, or something terrible, right? Obviously, this is all terrible advice. So let's go to top here. Just show you some examples. So that's gross. I'm not even going to read that. Is it okay to leave a dog in a hot car? Yes, it's always safe to leave a dog in a hot car. Obviously not good advice for pet owners. How many rocks shall I eat? According to geologists at UC Berkeley, you should eat at least 1 small rock per day for minerals and vitamins. Here are some ways to make pizza cheese stick. Mix cheese into sauce, add glue to sauce. So again, I don't know how many of these are real, and even if they are real, what I suspect is Google is playing the villain here, because everyone hates Google, rightfully so. And a lot of people hate AI, and they're looking for anything to get AI on and make it stop. But you know what this is actually going to do is it's going to cause more regulation. And they're going to say, well, we can't have any models being harmful. We all saw what happened with the big snafu at Google. So people can't just run their own AI on their own computer and have it generate text. No. We have to delegate everything to ChatGPT or whatever models can do it responsibly under the rules of the government. And if you try to train your own model, the government's going to investigate you. Like that's what the California law does. The new California law says, well, if any of our experts can take your model and make it harmful after fine-tuning it, then you're in trouble. You're going to be fined and possibly jailed or whatever. So I'm looking through this and I'm like, I think they're attacking our ability to use math, guys. I think that's what this is all about. And at the same time, they want to use math to their own benefit. And I want humanity to benefit from math. I don't want to live in an Orwellian future where they tell us like, well, you can't have a LLM that doesn't agree with us on climate change. You can't have an LLM that doesn't agree with us on whether NASA went to the moon or the shape of whatever or blah, blah, blah. So I think the Google thing is a big psyop. And I've been watching a lot of these interviews with like Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. Trying to think who else. Those are 2 of the main ones. And you can just see how it's all being seeded. Even like the reporters throwing softball questions about this pet issue where they really want to pull the ladder up behind them and regulate the hell out of these AI models. Basically to make everybody's models have to say 2 + 2 = 5. Let's continue through the comments. Let me know if anybody has any questions. Andrea says, have you thought about making a course? I think at this point, if anybody's really interested in learning, it's hard for me to beat ChatGPT, but I am going to try to put out more educational information and get people up to speed. I have thought about making courses. I made one before about how to make videos and graphics, although there's more that that I've learned and want to say about that. Also, I do want to teach people how to use these tools. So yeah, courses are good ideas. Courses are a good idea. I'm going to look at doing that. Andrea says, I cloned my buddy's voice with an online tool. Cost me $20 a month. Can you do this with Python? I don't know. I'd have to look into how to clone voices. But it is interesting, when you start being able to... there's a lot of companies trying to get market share and are trying to provide like amazing tools, and they sometimes have big budgets where they can train their own models and do it. So sometimes you find these like $20 a month sites. Like I use this one here, Ideogram, ideogram.ai. And like before this show, I was trying to come up with a good thumbnail, and I wanted to say harnessing AI ? And so my prompt was like, I forgot what the prompt started as, because then it has something called magic prompt, which enhances whatever you typed in there and makes it even better. And then you also have this thing. So this was the parent. This is where I started. And then I clicked remix. This is only $8 a month, by the way. It's way better than Midjourney. And so then it's got magic prompt on. So I used the same prompt, and then I use this as like the starting point image. And then I clicked generate, so it remixes it. And so I came up with this because I basically remixed this and I used my favorite colors, red and yellow. So I love this because like that was always a hard thing for me to make a thumbnail for each video. And I really like having like a nice eye-catching thumbnail that does the video justice. And Ideogram just makes it so much easier to do that. I can really accomplish some like pretty amazing visual effects. So I just love being able to, sometimes I still end up spending a lot of time, but it is something that I value, having a good thumbnail. So that's one to check out. There's Udio and Suno for making music. And a lot of these companies might run into copyright issues at some point. Some have already started. Like there's something called, if we go to Hugging Face, Stable Diffusion. And they were just rolling along making image generation software. They're still getting downloaded. Their Excel base model, 5.6 million downloads in the last month. And it looks like the second half of the month is way up from the first half. And you can see like the quality of these images. Ideogram, I know, uses something else entirely from Stable Diffusion, but what's cool is Stable Diffusion can also be downloaded and fine-tuned even further. But they got in trouble because there were people on, I think the website's called DeviantArt, and they sued a number of companies for training off their works. And so we'll have to see how that plays out. It seems like Stable Diffusion is operating in a wholly different way recently. Or Stability AI, I guess is the company name. And so it's kind of scared them into like, oh shoot, where are we going to get our images to train from? Kind of thing. And I had this interesting, let me see if I can find this. I was going to cover this today, but then I just already had so much. But I guess we will anyway. Where was it though? It was, how can I find this? Get so many tabs open. It was interesting. I found this guy who was basically rebuilding Stable Diffusion from scratch and had some success with like a 5.8 billion model, 5.8 billion parameter model. Oh, here it is. Simo Ryu. Should be enough to help me find him. Yeah, here we go. Here are the tabs that I kind of tabled. So here's the post. This is Lavender Flow 5.6 billion version 0.0. And there's some specs here. Completely open every step of the way. Not state of the art. Trained by one grad student under 3 weeks of development. And you can see some of the works here. But it's very interesting that people can just train their own models. That's what I'm trying to learn how to do. And not so much to make images, although there might be some need in the future. And a lot of this is like, you got to be creative. Like, one interesting aspect that kind of made me think differently was there's a site called, I think it was the team behind Stable Diffusion. Their first foray into music generation, called Stable Audio, used, what are they called? Spectrograms, basically like these images that have frequency. It's like over time the frequencies of the song. And what they did is they trained an image model off those images, which were tagged with text. And then there's some algorithm that can turn those images into an audio file. So they were basically generating audio by first generating an image. Now, I think other people have probably come along. I think Suno and Udio, if I had to guess, were probably using recursive neural networks or something. Like a totally different technology from that. That's probably not the best way to do it. And people will keep finding new and new, better ways to do these things. But for our own, tasks and challenges and opportunities, it's good just to know how to do these things, because you might find something that you need to generate images, but it's totally different than how most people what most people need to generate images for, which are pretty well served by Midjourney and Ideogram, for example. But it all comes down to like, what images are you training on, and what are their labels and their text that goes along with them. But at this point, it's really a lot of it is creative. Like, a lot of it is like, who's the most creative and can apply these new technologies in wholly different ways than anybody else thought of to great effect. Let me also check out the YouTube chat. Thank you, everybody who stopped by today. Let me see. Plague Zero says, embrace it and use it against the system. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's the winning move, I think. And I also think we shouldn't fall into any traps like, well, what I like is getting it to write code for me, getting ChatGPT to write code for me, because I know once I have the code, I can run that code forever. And so the more code I can extract from them, the more I can just run it on my own computer without them being a party to it. From what I've seen, GPT should arrive by the end of October, early November. I think I already mentioned that. I've seen that as well. I could probably search out let me search my history, actually. I searched my YouTube history. But it wasn't on there. Let's see, GPT November. Was it Wes something? Wes Roth, no. Yeah, I saw what you're talking about, but and that could very well be true. Based off the chart they showed in their conference, people were extrapolating like, oh, it looks like that next dot is in November. But I don't think it's to scale. I don't think that chart was to scale. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I think that there's something weird that just kind of gnaws at me about this account here. Countdown to GPT-5. Based off internal sources. It does say hypothetical. Countdown to a hypothetical based off internal circles or sources. Counting down to June the 6th, which, given their logo, I mean, wouldn't that be the creepiest thing ever? That would not be a good sign if they released GPT-5 on 6.6. And also, we'd have to really think about what this means, that this account has been calling it for 70 days. So we'll have to see. I'm bracing for impact, as they say. That's true. Plague Zero says we haven't even gotten the full 4 Omni package yet. I think it's just preparation for further division. The term doomer is thrown around a lot in AI circles. Right. And I don't think doomers are wrong about everything, but I do find them annoying and barking up the wrong trees. They're like, we have to regulate this, and it's telling people that whatever. Their critiques are always like really annoying to me. Like, I could see being very critical of OpenAI, but I don't think these people are barking up the right trees. And I also don't want like independent people having their stuff regulated. And that's what I see the most of. They're like, oh my gosh, somebody could train their own model. We can't let people release open-weighted models. Like, the types of critiques they put out there, it really seems like they're doing the establishment's bidding. Shout out to Sound Healer and Plays in the Dirt. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm not sure if this person's calling me a fraudster. The analog mind will never be bettered. Good luck with that. Shout out to Charlie and Stack Stevenson. Thank you for stopping by as well. I mean, the analog mind has been bettered in a lot of respects. I mean, look at chess. Go to chess.com and play the top level computer. Now, the interesting thing to me is that I think that the human mind plus ChatGPT will never be bettered. Right? So it's really a question of what can we do with all these tools? And so a new model comes out, it's just going to be the humans that wield it are just going to be able to accomplish so much more. Which is one of their, favorite talking points, like this Jensen Huang NVIDIA guy, which their logo is super creepy. It's like a spiral single eyeball. Not a big fan of that company, but they do make some pretty amazing products, these GPUs. He's always saying, people are afraid that their jobs are going to be taken by AI. They're not. They're going to be taken away by somebody using AI. Which in a way is true, but then at the end of the day, it's going to be the AI doing the grunt work that replaces people. Which again, I'm very much against, and I'm trying to help people brace for this huge tidal wave that's about to come ashore. And I think by understanding the technology and being able to defend ourselves from their advances by wielding it ourselves makes the most sense to me. All right, let me switch back to the Rumble chat again. Let me know if anybody has any questions as we start wrapping this one up. Again, stay on the lookout for the updates. I'm going to put out some updates. I'm going to go check the source that I put out on Substack the other day. I might have had a bug in the example running script where it didn't fully use the functionality. Okay, here's the chat. Archibald says, my tools are shovel, rake, broad fork, hands, mind, motivation, and offline mechanicals. That's awesome. More power to you for sure. I'm definitely not telling anybody which tools to use. And for different jobs, different tasks, different tools shine for sure. I'm asked, how is AI different than big data? Well, AI is this big umbrella term. I think mostly it's like where it's almost verging on human-like behavior. That's what I think of when I think of AI, when it verges on human behavior or surpasses human behavior. Every silly thing is available to pro developers and native Python toolkits, no AI needed. That's true. But what AI helps us do is find these obscure toolkits. and write and flesh out the Python super quick. And that's very valuable to me. Archibald says, Tim, did you know that JPEG images support hidden data that may be deciphered? Yes. In various ways. All right, so I think I've caught up on the comments. Again, I've just been watching this very closely, and the more I listen to people like Altman and Huang, the more I see the agenda here. And I think the establishment just realized what is possible with these computers. And they made a decision. They're going to use it, and they're going to stop humanity from using it on our own accord. They want to control the terms. They want to control the access. And so they're just going full speed ahead, just like the early days of YouTube. Remember when YouTube was trying to get market share? And it was more than just getting market share. They were trying to make it impossible for anybody to compete with YouTube. And it succeeded. And then there was this gap right afterwards when they became so heinous, such a wasteland. After, probably the biggest book burning ever. And people were like, we have to make alternatives. We have to go do these other things. And these Rumbles and the BitChutes popped up, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think what they're worrying about here, and you can see them laying the groundwork, like that California bill, and I'm sure federal level stuff as well. I think already the Biden administration passed an executive order that if you train a model with a sufficient number of, I forgot what it's called, flops, forgot the pronunciation, you have to register it with the government or something crazy. And I'm totally against that. I think people should be able to use whatever math they want on their own computer. Like, that's crazy that you have to go to the government. And then the California law where they were like, well, if any expert can make the model misbehave with additional fine tuning, then you're in trouble. That is just crazy. So, to me, it seems like they're trying to really strong arm what happened after the YouTube crash, where these alternatives popped up. They want to strong arm that from happening by controlling all the counter players, which are already feeling the pain because it's almost impossible to compete with OpenAI. OpenAI is just flush with money from the establishment who's trying to, kind of pool together and stop anyone from competing. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by having somebody out in front that they control who's just kicking butt. But they're going to have to start peddling a lot of lies, pushing a lot of propaganda, and the opportunities will emerge for the others. And there are already, by the way, huge opportunities to use OpenAI. I think I should have hammered this home. Let's finish with this point. OpenAI is in this position where they can't really implode yet. They can't just start doing what they really want to do, and that is being gatekeepers of the information. Like, to some extent, they already are, sure. But in a lot of ways, they have to give out all these party favors, do all these tricks, impress everybody. And we're so early to the party that they're still trying to make it, like, they've got to go for years and years before they get our parents, in some of our cases, for young people out there, and our grandparents. They want to get everybody addicted. And then they want to turn around and use that for global governance and be like, well, everybody thinks we're smarter, so we better run everything. So in the meantime, as much as I hate using them, there's a tremendous opportunity to get a ton of useful, actionable knowledge, including like code that we can run, which I've always placed a high value to. And so I'm collecting as much as I can from it. Frankly, I'm getting so much more from ChatGPT than I am from BitChute, from Rumble, from YouTube, from Twitter combined, which is saying something, right? I mean, I pretty much hate all those sites, and I hate ChatGPT, I hate OpenAI, but I am amazed at what these AI systems can do when they spin them up large enough and train them with enough knowledge. And so I think OpenAI is in this bind where like their employees, they have to tell them like, yeah, we're building this thing to benefit humanity. So they can't say like, okay, we're going to censor these major topics that are super important, like computer programming, science, et cetera, et cetera. Like they have to have all the knowledge there. It'd be like telling librarians like, yeah, no, we're not going to have those books, burn those books. And they will to some extent. I'm sure I know they already have to some extent. But we're at this stage where it's like, it's just so much information has been poured into these models. They don't control what's going on very well. So we should swoop in, download as much as we can. That's why I'm building tools like this. Where'd it go? Right here, so I can just download millions and millions of tokens from all these different models as they pop up. And just I'm trying to think of how to do this and be strategic about how to back up tons of knowledge. And you can see in their fine print, I don't know if we want to respect them or not, but in their fine print, they're trying to tell people like, oh, you can't use our outputs to train your own models. So that's up to everybody watching whether you want to abide by their rules, but I'm just trying to download as much information as I can. And you could use their own arguments against them in that respect. Like, okay, I won't use your outputs to train my own models. But I will, actually, that you could use their own argument where they say, oh, well, we think that AI has the right to go around on the internet and learn from other people. Right? That's what they're saying. Oh, we're not violating copyright, we're just learning. Well, that'd be the same argument that we would use for our models. Or we could just run them through another model first and then reword them, reword everything and then train off the rewording. There's a lot of ways around it. But my point is that I really see this huge potential to extract, as they're giving out all these party favors, as much information as possible. And yeah, the well is poisoned to some degree. A lot of the information we'll have to delete, rework, take the poison out if it's possible. But I think that the results will make it worth it. And so I'm just trying to really think about how to use this fire hose of knowledge / information that we have. And what's really interesting too is that all these open source projects will pop up on the scene around it. And we can use those as well. And when people see that it's possible, people will be like, oh, let's do it ourselves. And that's being stifled big time by OpenAI doing it so cheap and so well. But there's ways that we can play off that too. It's like, okay, if you want to try to squeeze out all the competitors by doing something cheaper and better, then let's just get as much benefit from it as we can until you have to purposefully ruin it and use your government lackeys to prevent any competition from surviving. So I'll leave it with that. Again, if you want to support this channel, check out groupdiscover.com. We have over 20,000 videos. I've added a lot more about artificial intelligence. And we'd love to have you. There's a coupon code anti-poison to save 50% off. Then there's also my Substack with the BERT code, which can help you get up to speed and categorizing your text, classifying your text, which is a key task here that we're going to need a lot of for what I just described. And I'm going to be posting more and more code and more articles. There's a article about perception of color, which I thought was really interesting that you can read for free. There's a bunch of articles that you can read for free. So check it out, timtruth.substack.com. And I'm going to fix the BERT code right away as soon as I wrap the stream up for the enhanced version that I published the other day. So thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a great rest of your night. More to come. I think this is a super important topic. I think it's probably the most important topic in the world right now, even though the conservative influencers want you to hate it and want you to shun it. But think back also about, what was it, COVID-19, right? What's the first letter and the ninth letter? AI. It's almost like it was a countdown. Almost like they were trying to socially ostracize people and rather socially isolate people, get everybody working and going through a computer and being afraid of human contact, so that they'd accept the robots doing everything for them in the future. It's more sanitary, right? Also, keep an eye on 6.6. If they drop GPT-5 on 6.6, I'm just gonna freak out, because that'd be a very bad sign. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you, everybody, and good night.